US President Donald Trump is making waves in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. He's pushing for a ceasefire deal, but with a catch. Trump is urging Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy to sign over an exclusive mineral rights to US firms, and he's not happy with Vladimir Putin either, slamming the Russian leader but questioning Zelenskyy's credibility. Meanwhile, fighting rages on. Russian and Ukrainian forces exchange fire in Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine claims it shot down 65 Russian drones overnight. And in Kharkiv, military hospital was hit by Russian drone strikes, injuring soldiers. Amid all this, Russia is floating a new idea, setting up a UN-supervised temporary administration in Ukraine. But that would need backing from all UN Security Council members. And in Kiev, Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Brekelmans warns that Ukraine needs military aid now as Russia ramps up its attacks. Let's take a listen in to what he had to say.
And Ukraine basically needs more of everything: ammunition, armed vehicles, drones, air defense. And we as Europeans, but also the United States, we need to keep up our deliveries. We also see that Russia is putting more and more equipment, more and more troops, more and more of everything at the battlefield. And we need to make sure that Ukraine can negotiate from a position of strength.
To discuss this further, we are joined by Daniel Boardman, correspondent for the National Telegraph, located in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you very much for joining us, Daniel. I first wanted to obviously point out the obvious and talk about this sudden change of direction from Donald Trump. He's known to change his mind. What do you think about Trump and Zelenskyy's relationship going forward after this outburst from the president?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been great. I mean, it's not worse than what happened in the Oval Office when Zelenskyy and JD Vance went at it. So, bright side for Ukraine, this isn't the worst Trump-Zelenskyy crisis in the last month. But Donald Trump is also mad at Russia because they're not coming to the table. So, I mean, this is just, I think this is a proof that you can't just say, oh, I love peace, I hate war, I love the most peace, I'm for peace, and that makes peace happen. I am reluctant to agree with the Europeans on this one, but I agree with the Europeans on this one. If you want to end the war, Ukraine does need to negotiate from a position of strength. Rarely the Europeans will find themselves into correct foreign policy. I mean, maybe they'll say it, but doing it is another thing. And what you have to understand here is Russia's economy is geared for war. All the young men are on the front lines, and the people are in the factories making very good money to produce for the war effort. The economy is fully geared for war. A ceasefire right now would result in an economic collapse inside Russia. So Russia is sort of incentivized to keep the war going as long as they possibly can, and pretty much at this rate, take over Ukraine, push to the Baltics, then through Poland. They're sort of kind of dead set on this path, economic suicide. So with Trump's idea to sort of get a minerals deal into Ukraine and stop the fighting, I think this is where the Ukrainians really messed up. And the worst shot fired in this war was the shot Zelenskyy took at JD Vance in the White House, because had Ukraine sort of been able to, just sort of suffer some territory for a little bit, the deal would have never manifested. But had Zelenskyy just gone along with Donald Trump's sort of peace plan full on and not started a fight with Trump and just let him say whatever he wanted to, it would put the Russians in a position where they'd have to defy Trump, because they can't really get into a ceasefire. As you see, all Ukraine really needs to do is just avoid disarmament, and any ceasefire benefits them more than the Russians, because yes, the Russians would take territory, but it would probably institute an economic crisis within Russia as the war machine stops pumping, and then all the the inflationary aspects take part in the economy. So you see this where we have real world issues that need to be solved, and there's sort of reasons why people are continuing to fight, and if we don't address them, then Russia and Ukraine are going to continue to fight, because Russia sort of is geared for war right now.
Daniel, what do you think of Donald Trump's negotiating strategy in this? Obviously, he's been flip-flapping on the terms of kind of moving to one side and then moving to the other. You can see him kind of edging towards Ukraine now, especially in regards to this mineral deal as well. Do you think Donald Trump is kind of, reports say he might see through Vladimir Putin's unwillingness to peace? Do you think that's what he thinks, or what do you think of Donald Trump's negotiating strategy in this regard?
This is a very good question. So I parse it out this way: the strategy is actually quite sound. The execution is not. So the strategy from Trump seems to be, and this is a viable strategy. Okay, America has the biggest stick, but we're willing to negotiate. Okay, so the Trump thing is basically to establish American dominance in the situation. Is basically, can I dictate my way or the highway? And so the Russians got this and started to say, yeah, sure, yes to Trump, not really meaning it, but just saying yes along with the strategy. Where then the Ukrainians were the first ones to point out sort of, I guess, the flaw and push and not just sort of play the Trump game to what would have likely been a win for them, as would have been a loss for Russia. But then again, the execution is, and then you have J.D. Vance yelling at Zelenskyy in the White House. You have certain, isolationist Republicans mouthing off, saying sort of, crazy things on Twitter. So the strategy is sound, right? Because if you can force both sides into negotiation, right? Okay, if Ukraine as a nation survives, this means if you don't disarm and you continue to be a functioning country, then you win, because as you saw, the Russian war machine has now got going, but at the first couple years, it lazily got up. It will eat itself due to corruption naturally within Russian society. So had Ukraine gotten the ceasefire, they actually could have won. But likely you would have not got to the ceasefire, but had Ukraine played ball, well, then America would have been forced to arm Ukraine further, which would have pushed Russia into a situation where they've been more forced to negotiate a peace in terms that they could have weaned off. The problem is it's been sort of clunkily instituted, and I don't think everyone in the Republican Party fully understands the strategy. You have people who I think are in the administration who have sort of carrying a vendetta towards Ukraine and Europe due to American cultural political issues. And that's kind of getting in the way of the Ukraine-Russia war effort, where there's two frames you're looking at it. One, there's the actual Russia-Ukraine war, which involved the country of Russia and the country of Ukraine and their internal politics and the reality on the ground. And then you have sort of the Western cultural aspect towards the Russia-Ukraine war, where it became sort of a right-left establishment, anti-establishment sort of wedge issue in a way. And I think these two things are coming into conflict. And Trump is trying to sort of sell the negotiations in one sphere of the world, which is this online, Elon Musk Twitter sphere. And it's disconnected from the reality on the ground there. And I think if Trump really wants to bring peace, he needs to focus more on the reality on the ground between Russia and Ukraine, understand what the Russians' incentives were. I mean, this was one of the good things about Trump 1.0, the administration. He was correct with the Europeans. If you don't have actual leverage over the Russians, which is natural gas of your own or from America, and you're reliant on Russian natural gas, it's going to be much harder to deter the Russians from doing something like they did in 2022. So what Trump is sort of come up with, and what the smarter people in the Trump administration have, I actually kind of, in theory, like the strategy they put out in Ukraine. It's just, I'm not sure if everyone was on board, and thus it led to the execution being poor. Because if you're trying to manage the feelings of someone like Tucker Carlson, who's kind of gone off the deep end geopolitically, and then actually manage a peace between Russia and Ukraine, it's not really viable to try and mix these sort of online culture war issues with the reality, real world ramifications of a kinetic war.
Yes, and talking about what's going on the ground, what do you make of it? Obviously, Russia has now claimed back the Kursk region, and there are reports from this minister that Ukraine is desperate now for military aid from foreign countries. What do you make of what's going on the ground right now?
Yeah, it's a real shame that the Ukrainians lost Kursk. I mean, Trump's line to Zelenskyy that was actually untrue. It was, about the cards and not being able to hold the cards and all that. Well, Kursk was actually a major card the Ukrainians held. It was sort of a brilliant ploy by the Ukrainians, which if they take Kursk and they can bargain back regions of Kursk for regions in Russia, or just to get a little bit and get a ceasefire, again, and then for again a rearm if I mean time benefits Ukraine because they can build up defenses because they're going to be the ones invaded and build up military production. So Kursk was a major card that could have been used to end the war and get to negotiate a peace faster. So it is really unfortunate because it likely will extend the war. The inability to bargain Kursk for a peace because as you see, Ukraine's trying to find another bargaining chip to actually negotiate with I mean, negotiation can only end a war if two sides have something to negotiate with. So without Kursk, this is again where reality and feelings of, oh, I hate war so much, like everyone does. No one likes killing. If we could protect every child in the world with a push of a button, most of us push the button. But there's realities to these things, and the loss of Kursk is going to likely prolong the war, and it makes negotiating peace much, much harder in reality.
Yes. Daniel Boardman, thank you very much for joining us. We now move to some more news updates in regard to the Myanmar question.